G'day and welcome back to the channel. So today's video is going to be the first in a new series of videos that I'm going to put out, where I want to take the time to cover a large number of exercises that I think everybody should try, that clinically seem to be very important in helping you conquer your aches and pains, but also improving the function of your body and improving the quality of your life. It's only fitting that the first exercise in this series is probably one of the most important exercises for anyone to do, regardless of whether you have any aches, pains, or injuries. And that, of course, is the couch stretch. So we're going to talk about how to do this stretch in a second and why it's potentially really valuable for you to practice. But if you're someone who looks at this position and thinks there's no chance that you're going to get into this successfully, I want to show you how to scale this up or down so that you can get into this exercise at your appropriate level. So clinically, the reason why the couch stretch is just so important for anyone to practice and hopefully master at some stage is because it does an amazing job at mobilizing and freeing up the tissue at the front of your thigh and your hip flexors at the front of your hip. Now you might be asking why that's important, and the main reason is because we spend so much of our lives sitting in this 90-degree shape. And because the body is an adaptive machine, it gets used to being in this position, especially if we're not spending as much time extending that hip behind us, whether we're walking, lunging, or even running. So almost by default, because of our modern world, practicing the couch stretch can fundamentally change how your body is functioning in a whole range of different ways. If you're someone that deals with any knee pain at all, any hip pain at all, any lower back pain or dysfunction in any way, shape, or form, seeing how tight your hip flexors and thigh muscles are can go a long way in getting to the root underlying cause of why that dysfunction may have crept in or may not be going away as quickly as you would want it to. So finding a version of the couch stretch that suits you to begin with, and then eventually working down to be able to do it on the ground like I did at the start of the video, based on what I find clinically, is a must for almost everyone. So all we need to think of when doing this is we want to get you to stand up and start doing it on a couch, as the name implies, or a chair. We want to get you to place your knee back into the corner of the chair. You might have to lean forward a little bit just to get your knee up there. It's much easier to do on a chair that has armrests or handles that you can hold on to. But however you can do this, you can even hold on to something in front. You want to make sure that your knee's back into the corner of the chair, your shins vertical with your foot pointing upwards. Now, if you're a little bit stiff through your ankle and you can't quite get there, you can come forward a little bit. But ideally what should be happening here is when you're keeping your back straight, we want you to come up from your hip, looking to try and expose some tightness at the front of your hip. A lot of people run into the hip tightness straight away, and if you value how far your shoulders go back, the orientation of your hip isn't changing, you're just arching your back to make up the difference. So make sure that you keep your back straight and try and extend as far as you can up from the front of your hip until you find a really comfortable tightness at either the front of your thigh or the front of that hip. Once we're here, wherever that tightness may be, we want to get you to try and tense up that tightness as much as you can for 5 to 10 seconds. Squeeze your bottom, squeeze all the muscles in the area to make them work. Again, if you're unaware, this is a PNF, or a contract relax technique. The idea with this is that when you squeeze something that's tight, it gets your brain and nervous system involved to create a reflex that after 5 or 10 seconds, once you stop tensing it while maintaining the position, it should prompt your tissue to give more than it had before. So you should instantly then be able to go further back into the stretch than you could before after tensing and relaxing that tissue. So we want to keep doing this for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes at a level that feels very comfortable for you and tolerable for you, where you can breathe, you can talk, you can hang out here. Now, if you haven't done this before, you might find that if you're so tight through the front of your thigh and through your hip, you may only be able to come up to this point before you feel you gain access to that horrible tightness at the front. That's okay. We want you to start where you can start, and then over the next few days, you should find that it eventually becomes easier and easier and easier to come all the way up nice and tall. Once you feel a little bit more comfortable with the basics, you can start being up nice and tall, and you can twist your trunk and your hips right to left and also side to side to find which aspect or which version of this stretch gives you access to your specific tightness, wherever that might be. But the same rules apply. Once you've done your stretching technique, you should instantly feel like it's lighter and looser through the front of that hip and the front of that thigh straight away. If you don't, then you haven't done anything. And then once you spend some time mastering this and feeling more and more comfortable with this, we can then progress it down onto the floor. So as I demonstrated at the start of the video, I'm lucky that I'm flexible enough that I can get my knee right into the bottom corner of the wall, keeping my back nice and straight. I can come up all the way until my butt hits my heel and I feel relatively vertical. comfortable. I can obviously come back further if I need to, although it is bending my back a little bit, just to find the better version of this stretch that's meaningful to me. Obviously, if you're doing it on the floor for the first time, please do it on a towel or a cushion, just so that your knee feels comfortable in this position. What I haven't mentioned so far, but is also really important to understand, is that if your knee is all the way back into the corner of the wall or the chair, the pressure itself will actually be above your kneecap, essentially at the base of your thigh. So if you are someone who struggles with pressure onto your knee, in theory there should still be a version of this that feels comfortable, provided that you're putting your knee in a position where the pressure is at the front of the knee and not directly down on top of that knee, which can annoy some of that tissue for some people. It may seem like semantics, but it can genuinely make a big difference. And then if you eventually get to the stage where doing it just on the floor feels a little less challenging than it did before, there's two more things you can add to this to ramp it up further. The first one is, again, getting you back into the original position that you were in. And if you have a step or something in front of you, what you can do is you can place your front foot up on that step just to ask more of your pelvis in this position. Again, you still want to look around to see where your best version of this stretch might be. We're going to do your contract relax or your PNF technique over the top of that to quickly ask that tissue to release. But this is a really nice way to challenge how that feels beyond the first two examples. And then the final way to progress this, or at least add a little bit of a different take to this exercise, is we can do the couch stretch with a power band. Now, the beauty of the couch stretch is that it does a really good job of freeing up the tissue down the front of your leg, but that's ultimately soft tissue at the end of the day. If you're in a position where you're constantly stuck in this 90-degree sitting hip position, then you can also accrue some anterior joint capsular tightness as well. And all the capsule is that if you think of your hip joint as a ball and socket joint and you wrap that up in a plastic wrap, that's essentially what your capsule is. It encapsulates the hip joint. All your soft tissues, your musculature exist on top of that. But if the joint itself, the capsular tissue around the joint becomes restricted, it can be really hard to express full range of motion if there's a handbrake underneath. So what the band does a fantastic job of is if you can place the band right up into your butt cheek crease and come back away from the band as far as you feel comfortable. And again, you can do just a regular hip flexor stretch in this position where you're keeping your trunk still, coming back towards the band, but the band's pulling your hip forwards, opening up and biasing that anterior or frontal joint capsular tissue. But because we're doing this through the filter of the couch stretch, it's a great way to do this up against the wall like we did before, or up against a chair. But for me, to demonstrate in this position, I'm comfortable enough being up nice and tall, pulling that knee, that heel towards my bottom, essentially creating that capsular stretch on top of this kneeling hip flexor stretch or couch stretch as well. Same deal, you can change the directions that you go. We can get you to hold this for 30 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever feels comfortable. But like a lot of mobility drills, you want to incorporate movement and joint motion into that, making sure that we're trying to find the angle that really biases whatever joint capsular stiffness or restriction might be there for you. And same thing as before, once you've done that, you should automatically feel like there's a ton more mobility through that hip than what there was before. So ultimately, it doesn't matter what version of the couch stretch you begin with, as long as you start somewhere. Clinically, as a physiotherapist, the couch stretch and its different versions are easily one of the most important and helpful exercises that I give to my patients. As I said before, it doesn't matter whether you've got lower back dysfunction, hip dysfunction, knee dysfunction, or no dysfunction, and you just want to move and feel or perform better. Because of the modern environment and how it demands so much sitting of us, the couch stretch in a way is essentially the anti-sitting stretch. It helps us combat a lot of the stuff that we do without even realizing it. So as always, props to Callie Starrett from the Ready States for developing, promoting, and popularizing this stretch. But this is just the first of many exercises that you should consider doing to improve how your body feels and functions. So as always, I genuinely hope that was helpful. Please let me know in the comments down below how good or bad that felt the first time you did it. Please like the video if it was helpful. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these stretches that I'll go through. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.